good morning to you, Yemi.
Good morning,
This
Arnie.
morning.
Exactly.
It's such a, well, maybe it's a cozy day, but of course, we say happy celebrations. Happy
Yeah.
Eid Kabir to our Muslim friends and everybody that is celebrating with them today. We're hoping for, bring the meat and everything.
When I was coming in the morning, I actually saw the ambience, in the street that is looking like, there's going to be lots of parties, across the states this morning.
Absolutely. So let's get into the conversation of the day, and it's something of importance to many people as to the elections, especially to everybody in a sense. The case is that court affirms Inec's power to issue election timetable, schedule of activities. That's exactly according to what we have about that story. Federal High Court in Abuja has held that the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, possesses the power to issue timetable for elections and alter it as it deems fit. Of course, in the judgment yesterday, Justice James Omotosho said the 2027 election timetable issued by INEC, stating the time frame within which political parties are to hold their primaries and the time frame for the submission of membership registers of political parties is valid and legally issued. That's exactly the conversation. But the bigger picture of this is how it was the SDP that filed this to say, oh, you know what, we want to have this to be considered, because they actually submitted about 5 questions to the court to say, well, some of them about the time frame of the timetable, and some of them about how well the Electoral Act, according to I think Section 84, should actually be played out in the 2027 elections. But the court has ruled in favor of INEC, but with some adjustments maybe to say, okay, yeah, there are certain things that must be ensured that this must go in tandem with what the Constitution has provided, and exactly the case. But, the bigger one is that everybody's asking the same question about judicial reforms to say, now that we know that elections are just a few months away, of course, INEC already stipulated their time frame and a timetable to involve what party members and exactly party candidates or aspirants would need to do, especially as to the election. Now, the debate over whether to scrap, all of this is still a thing to say. The election is here, and there are a lot of things that need to be done, especially about the election timetable. Now we understand why there's a lot of tension around this issue, and it's because of the lack of trust people have had in the system. I'm not just talking about the INEC system, but generally the judicial system as well, every other system that is involved in electioneering process in Nigeria. So there's been that fear to say, oh, we are not so sure of what we're going to get in the course of this. But INEC is trying to do something right to say, we have given the timetable, and it was not easy for them, to, you must understand, because the election date was actually shifted backwards. So they needed to do a lot of things. They needed to put a lot of things in place before the elections would come, knocking. And so that's a big conversation for them there. But I'm trying to take it from maybe the broader implication of if INEC gains flexibility in this sense, and then the accusation of manipulation is something that we expect if that happens. If they just allow maybe the SDP and every other party to say, okay, maybe they can shift it, especially when primaries parties should submit their candidates list and all of that. That could be a lot of things. One, we understand that parties are also finding it difficult to manage these kind of things, but within that time frame. Some parties still have litigation still in court, yet decided, cases still unheard and all of that. So they are still trying to get the house together, get themselves in order to ensure that they participate in this election. But that is also a conversation. That's why many parties are saying, what, can we have a redress of this particular issue? But the Electoral Act is the Electoral Act. Whatever you say is secondary to what the Electoral Act has given. If the Electoral Act says 90 days parties should submit a list or something in 90 days to elections. I mean, let's go ahead and do it. I know it's not easy for some parties, but eventually, what should be the outcome of this is that they should just try to do it. But possible reforms may also include that amendment of Electoral Act timelines, maybe after now, because we can't talk about amending the Electoral Act yet again. If we have to do that, then it will be after this election. And again, some are also calling calling for a clearer statutory powers for INEC. You know, INEC is supposed to be an independent National Electoral Commission, but the independent is what some people, some quarters have said is not so true about INEC. You can call them the National Electoral Commission, but if you put the independent, sometimes some people don't agree with that, and so they are saying, and that's because we understand how the board, the chairman, is going to be instituted. We understand that whoever is in power, the incumbent, will be the one most likely to submit a list or give a name to the Senate to pass, and then to maybe appoint a person, and which is why some are saying there should not be any political figure instigating or influencing the decision of whoever comes to INEC chair. Whoever comes to that chair must be a person that doesn't have to do, yes, it can be partisan in the sense that he's been in Nigeria, he's a Nigerian, he has the right to be partisan, but coming to that election, it must be somebody who is adjudged to be a credible person, competent person, who would not be biased in, giving out his duties or doling out his duties, as it were. But again, I'm just going to say that defections may also increase temporarily if there is an extension. If INEC allows maybe for this plea to come to bear, then the extensions would affect parties, and some people might still find a way to, do cross-carpeting and all of this, which eventually does not help political parties and does not help elections too. And of course, that's also a thing. But the medium term of this issue, the medium term focus will be that there's a possible reform that may also include the Electoral Act and then harmonize judicial interpretation, because we've seen oftentimes where it seems like there's a disharmony between judicial interpretation. You see a lot of court cases that it's almost similar, but you see different sentences or different calls by the judge, and you wonder, why is this any different from the other one? But this is politics. Sometimes they have ways of doing, maybe putting some things together that might not. But all of this, the cases for me, I'm looking out for whoever controls the rhythm of the Nigerian democracy. I think the judiciary should be much more involved in this, and they should do what is right by the people, long term, mid term, and even short term. They should try to work on what would help the country in a very good light. And of course, elected lawmakers have a lot of work to do. I mean, independent legislator, regulators as well, political parties, and everybody would need to do it. There's no one person that will fix all of this issue. It requires everybody's effort. Now that the court has served the sentence, now everybody should go back to do their work, do their assignment. Don't play the referee's game like we say in football. Don't just wait for the INEC alone to do. Everybody must work together. Even people that are voting, we all need to work together. But this is my take.
Exactly. I think you mentioned the major factors, saying that the SDP and I think the Youth Party, took the matter to court to say that, why should INEC dictate to us when we should conduct our primaries? I mean, they can come to observe. Basically, they've been doing that over the years, but them, being the person to determine when they should conduct the primaries is what they cannot take. And then because of that, they also mentioned that, it contravenes the Electoral Act that was passed by the House of Assembly, and so they should work on that. And then if you listen to, some INEC officials and even the spokesperson, that have been speaking for INEC. They also said the reason why INEC decided to move the election timetable a bit backward is because they felt it might clash with inauguration, and then moving it backward also have its own consequences, which is that, it's clashing with the Electoral Act that was passed, by the National Assembly. So INEC is in a state of dilemma, if you ask me, because basically the parties are saying we are not going to have it, because if at all, this case should not even go to court. It should not, get to the court. It's something that can be solved, amongst themselves, the political parties, and of course, the officials of INEC. But then, because we know that this is Nigeria, the political parties will not agree. And even INEC is saying we have the authority, and that was why the case started at the Federal High Court. And initially, the judge said there was the first ruling that said, okay, maybe the political parties should actually, have a say when it comes to when they would conduct their primaries. But then, in a turn, Justice Omotosho said that that act of saying the political parties should now determine the timetable for them to conduct their elections and when they are going to submit their membership register is inchoate. Lawyers with their big grammars, and then if you're not a lawyer, you are not used to that particular sector of the country, it might become difficult for you to understand these terms. But basically, they are saying that the court now ruled that INEC has the authority to now decide when these people should conduct their primaries, and of course INEC will be there to observe, and then they are not supposed to do any cross carpet, because initially I think INEC gave a May 10, and then if you look at the troubles that came after that May 10, at the time the court said okay, the parties should still be allowed to submit their register even after May 10, and then this back and forth, a lot of pressure on INEC. Imagine we have a few months to the election and we are already going to court. So what will happen when we are done with elections? You can imagine, the kind of court cases that we might have to go through. And then the same thing happened last elections. And I remember that even after last elections, a lot of persons complained, money, time was wasted in the courtroom, because of certain cases they were taken to court. And now we have started it. You see, how do you think the INEC was able to appeal this case? Because when the first ruling came out, INEC appealed the case, it speaks to the funds, because I mean you cannot appeal a case without actually spending money. You get a lawyer, you pay for brief, you do this and that out of the money that we are still trying to manage for elections, and even the political parties. So I really do not know where this is going to, because at the end of the day INEC is trying its best to ensure that it doesn't clash with inauguration, but then the court is also saying it must not clash with the Electoral Act, because whatsoever it is that INEC wants to do, it must be within the Electoral Act. You cannot act outside of the Electoral Act. So if that's your law, or let me say if your timetable is contravening the Electoral Act, and then it is at a disadvantage to the political parties, then it becomes a problem. And that is what we need to work on, because we don't want things like this to happen. Don't forget that even the INEC chairman, even till now, people are still calling for his resignation, because they feel that he is partisan in a way, especially because he was appointed by the president. They feel maybe he's just trying to look for ways to maybe make things easy for the ruling party, which we cannot even agree on. Is allegedly right, so we cannot agree on that. So I think INEC has a huge responsibility to prove itself to the people as an independent body that will conduct elections and then ensure that there's a free and fair elections, because at the end of the day, if they cannot agree, let's not even talk about the issues that surrounds all the political parties, not just the SDP and the Youth Party. We also have the case with the ADC. I remember somebody was on national TV recently and he said that INEC is even part of those that are trying to cause issues in the country. Why? Because they feel like certain names that are on the portal, INEC, the court has ruled, and then INEC is left to change some of these names. So these are the issues that we have in this country at this point in time. And then I think we need to come back to the drawing board. What does the Electoral Act say? The one that was passed by the House of Assembly. And what is INEC trying to do? What is the claim of the political parties? Because initially we never had this problem of primaries and then things like that, party registrar. So I don't know, maybe it's because of this new Electoral Act, and then it's bound to cause issues anyways, because this is the first time that we are testing it. Don't forget that even certain persons, before that act was passed, they complained bitterly. The political parties, even some members within the House of Assembly, were against the act. And then when it was sent to the president, for assent, I think the president, gave his assent, within 24 hours. And then people were asking questions. This thing that was actually signed by the president, will it not cause issues before the elections? Because before you actually sign a document like that is new to the system, new to the country, new to the political parties, there are certain people that should go through it. Maybe, let's say, for instance, certain members, of the political parties, talk about, the finance minister, they need to go through it. Is it going to work well? And then quite a number of other persons too. So maybe this is why we are here this morning, because maybe it was rushed in a way. I'm talking about the signing now. We didn't take proper scrutiny of certain items on the list, because I mean Nigeria is a complex country, and then even the political parties, they are also complex. They are going through internal crisis, and because of their internal crisis, is affecting certain things in the country. And if care is not taken, I don't know, we might actually stall things. It might affect the outcome of certain elections, and then it might even give INEC issues, because INEC has a whole lot of responsibilities, duties here and there that they need to actually focus on. You talk about trying to work on what actually happened the last election. Don't forget that people complained bitterly about the beavers. They complained about the fact that some INEC officials got late to the polls. These are the things that we want to avoid in this election. We don't want to hear inconclusive. We don't want to hear the beavers did not work. We don't want to hear that some persons were unable to get the accreditation. So INEC has a lot of responsibilities. They are not supposed to be battling with political parties taking them to court at this stage, election is still far away. Is not. I don't think it's the right thing to do, because international bodies are watching, and then at the end of the day, they'll be here. They'll be in Nigeria, because for every national election, international bodies will be here to actually monitor the election. What are you going to say about us? I mean, after the elections, we need to be careful of how we portray ourselves, basically.
Well, I think just like we've mentioned too, one of the very important things to note in this conversation is time. And time is of the essence. And for a lot of reasons, I understand maybe from the position of the INEC body, what they are trying to do, like you mentioned too. There's a lot on their hands. They have so much to do within a stipulated period of time. And so they have to do it. Also considering the fact that for elections to run very well, there has to be international what do you call them, observers, right? They have to come, so they need to first give these people a prior notice. So there are a lot of things they need time to do. So for example, if they let parties just decide when they want to have their primaries and all of that, it can affect the INEC's personal timetable in a lot of ways, because INEC needs to do they need to do so much before the elections. For one, I'm saying, like, they need to invite some people, some international observers. They need to inform every political party as well. They need to get some things together. And eventually, if they do not have these things within their frame, within their hands, within their control, then it becomes a problem for them going into the elections. And we don't want that to happen. Like you also mentioned, there are a lot of issues about the development we've had, especially with beavers. While there's still that conversation of transmitting 100% and all of that, right from polling units and all, but it's still a thing. There are a lot of things we're trying to work with, we're trying to improve on. But I know if we really do well by these things, I believe this election will be fair and credible. But there's been a lot of allegations from different quarters, and I think that's why this is necessary. Some persons don't believe this incumbent administration is ready to have a free, fair, and credible election. They still think, in fact, just like their primaries, some were saying that those figures were, because we saw pictures and videos of somebody counting, and then almost like he forgot how to count 1, 2, 3, and
a
then
new arithmetic system of counting. Actually, I mean, it's actually alien to some Nigerians.
It's so strange, because I said, wait, what's up? This on screen, you saw your camera, right? You saw that you're on record, and you're doing one, and then you are, this arithmetic is different. I mean, I wish I was taught this one in my primary school days. Perhaps I'll have a better understanding of mathematics, but their mathematics, I think political mathematics is different from the arithmetic that we know in the world. But, so that's why a lot of persons are saying, there's a chance for this kind of thing to happen again. And even before then, there are speculations, of course, moving around. Everybody's saying, some people saying that this administration, they don't want to leave this power, and for whatever it will take is what they will do to get back into power. And so some are saying that maybe the INEC needs to do things that will not favor them too, because oftentimes, and especially in the Electoral Act and then the way it's been displayed recently has been in a way, I'm not saying it favors the APC, but it looks more like every other party is going to have difficulty to get along with these things. But the APC, maybe because they already have a structure to work with, it might not really be a big deal to them, because that's why you also mentioned that some said the president was so much in a haste to just sign it without considering, like you mentioned, that a lot of people, I mean, the Attorney General of the Federation, Secretary, all of those people should have come together before the president just say, okay, let's put the pen to paper. More like it was premeditated to say, okay, this is what we want. So once they brought it, said, hey, was that the thing we're talking about? Okay, so let's sign this. It's okay. I mean, so that's why a lot of presidents are trying to test the credibility of these elections come 2026. And I know the whole responsibility now lies on Amupita to prove people wrong, to do what is right by the Nigerian people and by the elections come 2026. I'm just hoping that all of these issues that I like the point you made, and it's very valid, that it should not be at this point that INEC is having to go to court. It should not even happen. Why? A lot of persons will lose trust further, and again, it can cause voter fatigue. Some people will just feel like, what was the point? If these people are just going back and forth, and then eventually they get a court sentence, and some people are still finding it difficult to interpret whatever sentence is that. I mean, it could also encourage lower turnouts. We know voter apathy is something we don't want. And we've some have said there's a chance for this to happen again if we do not take things carefully. Well, also the credibility crisis also is still emanating. Some saying in different quarters that INEC might not be the best way to conduct election. I'm saying having an INEC body that has been instituted by the incumbents is not the right way to conduct elections in the country. But I mean, maybe there are other ways to do. I've seen some other countries. I was trying to check India and some places where they have almost a full administrative control, and it's not a legislative process to how their INEC body is going to be. Some have also had maybe the flip side of it to say it's the legislative arm that controls the bigger picture of whoever mans their electoral commission, and a lot of conversations. But I hope someday soon enough, as we progress in all of this, I hope we get to the end of this and get it better, so that elections will be free, fair, and credible, because that's the least that people are expecting. I mean, all of these issues, people are expecting to have whoever deserves the crown should wear the crown. Whatever the case is, whether or not you have grudges, whether or not you're trying to favor anybody, let the voice of the people, let it count, and let that matter much to everybody than every of these processes and the fights they're having in courts and all.
Exactly, and then let me take you from the angle of the last APC primaries, the election. I think they came up with 10.9 million votes, and then I think I watched a video yesterday night, and then you watched that. That's the national chairman of APC. It was on national TV, and then he was asked that question that how did you people arrive at that number of votes? And then I think he came prepared with stat, because he was quoting the number of votes that was submitted by each of the political parties, as compared to the APC, and then he said, I mean, you cannot, it's not far-fetched, the reason why we have 10.9 million votes. So whether that will transform to votes, the same number of votes, or it will be more than that in the next elections, we really cannot tell. Good luck to the APC. But there's something that we also need to talk about, and that's the chaos going on within the opposition parties. See, if you give some opposition parties 2 more months to actually submit certain things, they will still not submit it. No, because they are going through internal crisis. See, let me give you an instance now. There's a report here that is coming from Dumebi Kachiku, the 2027 presidential candidate of the ADC. I'm sure you're aware of the factions within the ADC. We will go to court and charge the INEC chairman with contempt if the commission fails to uphold the names of those who emerge from our convention on its portal. There's a clear court order directing that state chairmen should conduct congresses and conventions, which has been duly carried out. So that's another problem on its own. So even beyond the election timetable, some persons are willing to charge INEC to court because they think INEC has failed to, to post the names of those who won their, elections, on their portal. So these people are still going to look at all the opposition parties, their factions, talk of any, PDP, their factions, Labour Party, their factions, ADC, maybe NDC, maybe that's the only party that we are still not sure whether they are factions or not. So this party, they are going through a lot, internally, and so it is now contributing to the issues they are going through with the INEC. So maybe they need to settle their internal crisis first and then move on to INEC. This matter can be solved without court. I mean, why is it that any simple thing we are already heading to court? And basically, the courts have more issues to deal with than this. Because if you have started going to court now, imagine the number of cases. The last election, that was the highest number of court cases that we have experienced in this country ever since we gained, ever since we moved to democracy in 1999. So what, you can even speculate what we might experience in the next elections, after elections. It doesn't speak well. Because I think, you see, the position of the INEC chairman basically is a very delicate position. It's as sensitive as that of a press secretary in the United States. Because imagine if a press secretary decides to make any silly statement, it can throw the entire country into turmoil. That's the same for INEC. So they need to tread carefully and then make sure that whatever it is that they're going to do will not actually cause more crisis. We can't deal with that at this level, right? We need to actually, and then to the political parties as well. Yes, INEC is saying we want to determine your primaries, this and that. I mean, there's a way to solve all this, because INEC, the defense of INEC right now is to say that we want to make sure that there's orderliness. We don't want a situation whereby, these people will actually stall and then give room for certain persons to still defect even after the ultimatum has elapsed. So I think that's what INEC is trying to target. And the political parties are saying, do not put us under any rush. Give us time. We still have time to actually. I remember even Makinde at the time, the governor said it one time and said that, look at the timetable that INEC has reeled out to the people, in terms of, you need to submit your party, registers and things like that. He also complained about it. And then, we have 31 governors in the APC. Maybe that's why we are not hearing so much from that angle. So basically, INEC and the political parties can actually have meetings. And before we let a small thing, we take it to court. Somebody's having a headache, you go to court. Somebody's having stomach pain, we go to court. Really? Maybe because I don't understand. Maybe because we have so many courts in the country. Now, this is now the issue. Because the case is still in the appellate court now. INEC decided to appeal that case. And then if case not taken, if they are unable to resolve this internally, the case will then move to the Supreme Court. we are still spending money, still wasting time. And then if the Supreme Court now gives the final verdict, that settles the entire problem. And maybe all parties can now rest and say, okay, we accept the ruling, if at all, even though we are not comfortable with the ruling. So must we get to that point? No, must we always get to Supreme Court? It's a problem. Really.
It is. And I think just lastly, maybe say a few things to one of the things you've mentioned. And I think it's very important that we note that that some persons are not complaining while others are complaining. But some would say maybe it's in the best interest of those who are not complaining and they find a way to just work with whatever is given. But that we go to court again and again means that one thing, I know one of the ways we do this is politically. It's politically motivated in a sense to say they want to buy time, they want distraction. There are certain things going on that everybody is trying to, but I was also looking at the party structures too. We have issues with parties. There are many parties who have not even found their footing. They're still trying to get one thing or the other. And again, I love the proposition you made. And I think it's good to have that as a solutions journalism kind of thing to say that instead of just castigating these people or just criticizing the reforms and all of this, why don't we prefer solution? And I love the solution you gave, that why don't maybe the INEC sit with party members and have a kind of conversation, have a consultation. Let's say, okay, so this is the case, this is the timetable, how can we make it right? And call them to, but unfortunately too, some parties already have factions. So how do you call faction? If you call two factions of this party and you call just one person to represent this party, it means that two people are representing this party, maybe not together, but because they might still give
in a country where the same party is announcing the two candidates.
So it might be difficult for them to even, but I love that if they can get everybody to sit at table and let's have conversation. How can we, if you think this is not right that INEC is doing, what do you think is the right thing? Because oftentimes people just want to say things. They don't think about the solution. They just want to say, criticize things because they feel like it's easy. Everybody can criticize. It's easy to see any wrong in anything. I can be a critic. I can just see something and say, this thing is wrong. But how do you make it right? Ask the person that I've just said that. How do you make, and I think that's one of the things we should delve into. How can we make things better? How can we do solutions in everything? Solutions, journalism, solutions, politics, solutions, judicial process, whatever it is. Let's have solutions instead of just saying, it's always like this, we are taking it to courts back and forth. What's the solution? We understand that the solution of the court takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of money. It takes a lot of resources. That is not necessary. There are other ways we can have these conversations, have it together, and let's know, okay, so according to what the party had at this meeting with the INEC, this is what is going to happen, and this is what we are rolling out for the 2027 election. So every other person that wants to complain, let them go back to their representative. Representative that told, that was in the meeting, that was at the meeting with INEC, should be the one to now answer the case. If you say, why did they now do? Okay, ask that guy. He came from your party. That solves it in a way. But I know we have a lot of political conferences and all of these things in Nigeria. But someday I'm hoping that we can get to a point where we can make solution the order of the day in this country.
Exactly. Just to conclude, I think that's why journalism, when it comes to journalism, you have to be very objective, and then you cannot allow your emotions to get in the way. Yes, you're in Nigeria, but you have to look at issues critically, look at both sides, and then look at how you can profile solutions, basically. And this is to INEC, and of course the INEC chairman. I mean, he has time to still make inquiries. There were certain problems that Nigerians experienced in the last elections, like inconclusive, technical glitches, beavers not working, problems with accreditations. These are the issues that they need to work on to ensure that we get improvement in the next elections, because INEC has that duty, and there's enough time to make inquiries. Because I mean, if at all you need to speak to experts that are not even from this country, we want to make sure that we do not experience the same issues that we experienced in the last time, because it will tell. Because now we have some candidates, even in the ADC, they are saying we are not going to. Amici recently, he's saying I'm not going to accept the results of the primaries, because he said that you notice some irregularities and things like that, not just ADC alone. So the INEC chairman and the entire body should ensure that certain issues that we experienced the last time do not come up again. And it's a fine place to leave that discussion this morning. Of course, we're